Hello, everyone, and welcome to the paddock. My name is Henrik.
And my name is Sierra, and we will be going over both the US Grand Prix and the Mexico City Grand Prix, just due to the fact that trying to figure out a time to record is ridiculous.
Yep. And of course, you were at the United States Grand Prix in person.
I was. It was very fun, hot as hell, but seeing a Ferrari 1-2 in person, was something I recommend highly
Hmm.
if you ever get lucky when you go to a race.
It has to be a good thing to witness and very historic.
I mean, unless you're not a Ferrari fan, then I, I'm sorry.
Yep, I feel bad for you if you aren't.
I
Nice
mean,
aside.
they don't have to deal with constant heartbreak, I guess.
No, no, that's a good point. But but we are here to discuss the US and the Mexico Grand Prix. So,
The last six races are probably going to be dramatic, to say the least. If
yep,
these two have said anything.
yep. And of course, we had three races as opposed to just two, counting sprint races. But
I mean, we also have Brazil this weekend, so it's technically we have six more races because there's a sprint this weekend. But if we're counting
yep.
not Brazil, because we're gonna go over Brazil next week, we have three more races, especially because we have a 3 week break in between these three races.
So, yeah, with the 3 week break coming and stuff like that, why not cover Austin and Mexico now and then move on to Sao Paulo next week?
All right. So I feel like we should get the minor topics out of the way, aka not Ferrari, McLaren, and Max.
Right.
Well, and Sergio, but Sergio is more for Mexico, not the US part of
Hmm.
this podcast.
Anything new
So,
apart from the obvious?
I mean,
Yeah,
Haas
they
looking like they are becoming the fifth fastest team.
yeah they tend to like these American circuits.
They were one of the constructors who brought the most upgrades in the US Grand Prix. I believe it was
Yes.
like a total of 15 different parts or something like that.
Right. And that's because they race at home in the US, so that would be natural.
And they consider Texas their home race, not Miami or Vegas, but not saying they aren't also US Grand Prix. So it is
Mm.
what it is. I guess this was the first race we got Liam Lawson in after replacing Daniel.
We had him in the US and of course Mexico, which was a very good outing for him.
Especially going into the US Grand Prix, having that basically starting at the end of the grid because of the penalty that Daniel had from the last in Singapore that he
Yep.
inherited. So to be able to start from the back of the grid and finish into ninth on his debut for the season is looking really promising. Of
Mm.
course, in Mexico, there were other factors that caused him not to be able to score points.
Such as Tsunoda being this kind of traffic cone-esque thing, and yeah,
Well, Sonoda, so in qualifying for Mexico, Sonoda did crash on his last push lap, meaning that with 10 seconds left, quali was over. Lawson finished quali behind Sonoda in 12th. Yes,
yeah, I think
because
so. Yeah,
Sonoda was in
12th.
11th. So not being able to make it to Q3, and then you had him fighting with Checo, which some people are not happy about. But I think it's not because of the battle, it's because of the second pass that happened when he was going down the straight and Lawson decided to be brave in Mexico and show him the middle finger.
Literally, yeah.
But it can be said that Liam is not making the greatest impressions on the older drivers of the grid, I guess I'll say. Because you
No,
had,
no, but do remember that the V carb isn't really a winning car by any means.
no, but I mean, he was having, he apparently, Fernando and US had issues with him while they were racing.
Yeah.
Now you have Sergio Perez in Mexico. And then also, I saw some onboards later this week of Carlos yelling at him for not getting out of the way for blue flag. So it was just, I think it shows that Liam isn't here to play. He is here for the seat, whether it is in the V carb or it's for Checo's seat. And
Or alternatively Sauber, but
I
I
think
don't.
Red Bull keeps him.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't.
think Red Bull. Go ahead.
Of course, I don't hope so, but I think if Red Bull slash VCarb don't get their act together, he could end up there.
If Yuki had a better result this week or in Mexico, that just happened, I think it would have been more of a shot. But between Yuki crash, because Yuki was up in P3 during practices for Mexico, but between him getting penalties in the US Grand Prix, which caused his race to be ruined, and then this one where in quali he crashed, and then in the race he had a racing incident between him, Albon, and not George, Pierre, that caused both him and Albon to crash in turn one. It's not looking good that Yuki will get the seat. I understand that it was announced that Honda one is pushing for him to at least try the seat, and then Red Bull announced that in the after season testing, he will be one of the drivers to test the Red Bull. So, but I don't think that means he gets the seat.
No, not necessarily. Well, testing is one thing, and we all know what testing can do. Frederick Vesti tested with Mercedes Mexico last year, and look what happened. Nothing.
Exactly. So that's the I think Liam definitely has, I believe he has the V carb seat next season. I'll state that.
That's a given, more or less, at
Yeah.
this point.
Will, especially with how bad Perez race went, and we will get to that in this podcast. I'll ask you this. Do you see if Brazil is I won't say as bad because I don't think Checo can get worse than what just happened.
Mm.
But if Liam either scores points again, out qualifies and outperforms Yuki, or is at least close to Sergio, or Sergio doesn't make it into the points, do you see Red Bull possibly changing out Sergio to Liam?
Yeah, that could be a possibility, but I don't think so. Of
Uh,
course, you're just playing with possibilities, and
yes.
I won't really deny you that. I'll let you do that. But based on how they have been in this self-destruction phase for a while now, I don't think that would be the case, really. Yeah.
And I guess this is where it comes in is like with, and again, this is a whole nother topic of the Max Lando thing, but Sergio isn't up there to help Max in any way. He's never qualifying well enough to play a part in either holding Lando up or anything
Mm.
like that. So I'm not saying specifically Liam, like even if they throw Yuki in there, like do you think it is possible that in this 3 week gap between Brazil and then the last three races, Red Bull does switch Sergio with one of the V carb drivers and Sergio goes into that V carb? Because
Yeah,
Christian already said that.
yeah, of course that could also be a possibility, but again, Red Bull is in this self-destruction era, so they could screw us over by not doing it, but I hope that they
Well, it
do it.
screws them over more.
Yeah,
Doesn't screw us over.
but it does in a way because you have this once talented driver in an underperforming team, and then we're screwed for points for Ricard fans and stuff like that.
I'm just saying in terms of like as a Red Bull whole because it is a sister team. They could, and Red Bull or Christian has said that Sergio will finish the season. Red Bull and VCarb are sister teams. So just because Christian says Sergio will finish the season doesn't technically mean he'll finish the season in a Red Bull.
No, but what has been said is that he will finish in the system and not necessarily with Red Bull SSA, and that can be interpreted as many things.
We'll get more to Sergio here in a second. We're just gonna go over more of them. With Liam and Yuki, it is something you have to bring up because it is V carb into the into the Red Bull family.
And I also remember he said that getting Lawson on board felt weird, so that can also play a part.
I think it's weird because I don't think he expected Liam to be a duck to water, as I guess I'll say it. Like basically pick up where he left off last season.
Well, yeah, he left on a high in Singapore last season, so
His last race was Qatar.
oh yeah, right. Yeah, he left on a high there, got some points. So
So,
yeah, hopefully
mhm.
he doesn't screw up this time.
Well, what I mean, for the two races he hasn't ever driven at. Like Liam can I'm a Liam Lawson fan. I was last year. He is I also for the people who are like he's ungrateful, he needs to be more humble. Sergio saying he needs to be more humble. I'm like he is racing for a seat. He is not announced for a seat, but he is
No.
racing for a seat. And he also knows there's a chance he could make the main Red Bull team.
Hmm.
He's not just gonna sit back and let you pass him or not
No.
fight you.
No, he's gonna fight
Was
you,
the
and for obvious reasons, of course.
like was the middle finger a little too much on the straight?
Yeah,
Yes.
it was harsh.
But it's also the heat of the moment thing.
And again, if I want to play around with this a little bit, if Lawson gets the Red Bull seat and Perez gets the V-carb seat, what would happen?
Maybe Sergio goes back to what he was, but Sergio is a very good driver, but that Red Bull does not work with Sergio's driving style.
And of
So,
course, we have this discussion that is seemingly never ending of is it the car, is it the driver, is it both? Yeah,
I mean,
we'll finally solve that debate.
yeah, because I can't even say like Max is getting the maximum out of that car.
It was built for him. What can you expect, really?
I mean, if you go off what an that Albon interview that happened a while ago saying like it's not specifically built for Max, but because he's the number one driver, it's more specified to him. Like, yes, that makes sense. But also, I feel like it's not just Max getting everything out of that car.
Hmm.
I mean, we can talk about Sergio now and then we'll get to other topics, but Sergio in Mexico was absolutely terrible.
The funny thing about that is that he doesn't like Mexico for some reason.
He wants to win it. Like last year, I completely understand him going for that move, going three wide, not seeing Max on the inside, and then crashing with Charles. Like he's going for the win with the best car on the grid.
Right. To word it a little differently, I'm gonna say that Mexico doesn't like him.
There you go. This race, he won his out on Q1, can't get in his grid box correctly.
Alonso Saudi Arabia 2023 vibes, but all right.
Like but this was worse. Like he was a good like almost 5-ish feet in front of like no wonder he got like it was a good start, don't get me wrong, but it's because he wasn't in the grid box. So then when like they're being told like you have a 5 seconds, he's like, no, it was a great start. Like, what are you doing? Then you have the Lawson v him fight battle on track where he tries to be as aggressive as Max and ends up getting floor or side pod damage and then is annoyed that Lawson fought back. When Max eventually gets his 20 seconds of penalties, we'll talk about it. He is still behind Max when he comes out. And then you have Red Bull being like, oh, let's give you fastest lap. One, dude has a hole in his side pod. And two, they knew Charles in the Ferrari, which has been faster, was going for fastest lap. What? Like he finished dead last for. I mean, he was going to finish dead last. No, because Liam got damage from Colapinto, but he was going to not finish last and then finish last and didn't get fastest lap.
Yeah, it was a fun race.
Not for Sergio.
No, but
Also,
for the viewers.
oh, for the viewers, I mean, it was sad to watch. I was just like, retire the car, please retire the car. I don't want this.
Did they retire Lawson?
No, Lawson. So Lawson had the battle with Colapinto, which
Hmm.
Colapinto ended up getting a penalty for because he took off his end plate in the front wing. So Lawson had to pit for a new front wing, and then they put softs on him, and then Lawson got the fastest lap for a bit, and then that's before Charles and Checo had a battle for fastest lap. Battle is in quotations because it wasn't a battle.
Yeah.
Like he finished Sergio, I mean he only finished a lap down.
And the lap down for him isn't really something to write home about.
No. I
It's,
mean it was only a tenth faster than Lawson.
but still, a tenth is a tenth, and yeah.
Like you can argue that, oh, well, he had side pod damage, yada yada. It's like I get that. But that's my Checo spiel. I
Mhm.
don't want to talk about it anymore because it's an over talked about topic,
And we don't have to.
and we don't have to.
I just
So,
have one question for every Red Bull fan in the world, and that's, are you still angry?
I mean, they might be angry about other things, but I don't think Checo's one of them. I think they're angry that he's still in the seat.
Mm.
Let's go on to Alpine for a bit. First off, it was announced that Alpine and Honda were both fined for regulation issues. So Alpine, I believe, was fined like 400, like at least 400,000 euros or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was 400,000 euros.
I don't remember what Honda was.
Was it 600 or something?
Maybe. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
But Alpine, they brought a livery that looked like McLaren in Austin. The joke was that they literally stole the McLaren car because Pierre had a. I will state Esteban did not have the upgrades in Austin, so he did not finish well. But I think the last 2 weeks showed that Alpine
Mm.
has finally stopped giving the same treatment to both Esteban and Pierre with
And
P
of course, they have a very good team principal in Oliver Rogues, which helped
mhm.
them, I would assume. And if you don't
I,
know who he is, then you can just look up High Tech F2 and you know what we're talking about, of course.
But Pierre, he finished 12th in the sprint.
Mm.
Or no, he finished 12th in the race, even though at one point he did qualify fifth. Nope, that's wrong. Seventh in Austin. So, but that was more because he had a really bad pit stop, causing him to be in the pits for, I believe it was 4 seconds. But to see the upgrades continue to work going into Mexico, where he qualified, my computer
Mm.
wants to actually work. He qualified eighth, so for the second time making it into Q3, and then did finish in the points. He finished 10th. So I think
Mm.
whatever direction Alpine has gone with their upgrades is working. I mean, we'll see for the last 4 races what happens, but if anything, it shows a good sign for next year.
And of course, they have Mr. Gasly and Doohan next year,
Yes,
so we will see how that turns out.
I think what anything, I'm more concerned, not concerned, but I mean, I guess concern is a word to say because you do have Esteban going over to Haas,
Mm.
and he doesn't seem to have the same drive right now. And maybe that's just because he knows he's leaving. He's
Uh,
trying to just kind of get through the rest of the season. But I mean, if anything, if you're an Ollie Behrman fan, you should be happy about what it's looking like. But as a Haas fan in general, where Haas is, I would say consistently maybe looking like the fifth fastest team on a
mm.
given Sunday, does it seem a little concerning? Or
It
I
does. I don't know why, but it seems concerning for some reason.
I like Esteban off the grid. His personality off the grid, fantastic. On the grid, it's a little but
Yep.
it's still like he had a pit lane start and finished 13th in Mexico.
I've said my little thing for the Spa episode, so if you want to hear my take on it, you can listen to that.
I mean, I think it might just be he's just trying to finish the end of the season. He's not as involved in Alpine. Alpine isn't giving him. He is definitely the second driver right now in that
Mm.
team, but he had the upgrades this season or in Mexico and only got to 13th.
But that the Alpine is also horrendous.
Well, I say that because they did look the Alpine looked better these last 2 races.
Better than Q1 exits, P16 and 17. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, but not good by any means. Not good.
No. I mean, hopefully next season they have a bet they at least know what happened and they have a bit more competitiveness in those first couple of races.
And hopefully Oliver Oaks doesn't leave midway through the season.
Oh God. Yeah, really.
They
I
have
mean,
a
they're
habit
not
of
gonna be
doing that, so
they're not gonna be French engines anymore, so who actually knows?
for one more season they're gonna be.
Yes. Let's quickly talk about our green willy bins. And I really only want to talk about the fact that in Mexico, both Valtteri and Zhou did not finish last. They finished 14th and 15th.
Which is an
Also,
achievement for them for some reason.
more Zhou for not finishing last. But Valtteri did look good in Mexico. He did make it to Q2 in Mexico.
Which was the first for him since joining.
Yes, but his lowest finish in Mexico qualifying in his career. So it's a shame that he only could qualify into, I believe he was 15th by the end of it. Yes, he was 15th. He was behind both Aston Martins. So, I mean, I will say I really think that I know Salva said they would make a decision for who gets that seat mid-November, so probably within these in the 3-week break.
Or
Um,
possibly after as well.
I don't see them pushing it to the last 3 races unless they're trying to get Colapinto, but I don't think Colapinto will go, especially since you said he doesn't have a drive for 2025. I think he wants to stay in the Williams family.
Well, yeah, he okay, so he could do that as this reserve.
I really do think that Salba will keep Valtteri. I think
Why?
going into next season, having Hulkenberg and Valtteri to just rework, like I understand we're going into new regulations in 2026, but to have two experienced drivers who know what they're doing, get that car to a stable condition by the end of the season next year will help, I'll say Audi at that point going forward. Also, I mean, I know there's Teo Porcher, but again, he's not really talked about for that seat. Valtteri has been there for now 2, 3 seasons. So and I don't think they're keeping Joe. Like, I'm not even entertaining that fact.
If they do, it's for two reasons.
But
One being
money.
Dior and the other being China. So who knows?
But I don't think anybody it's been on the radar, especially because I think they even mentioned how much he's bringing in, and it's like, they're still like, nah.
Hmm.
I don't see them extending Valtteri longer than a year. I
Well,
just see them signing him for 2025.
okay. Since the regulation change is for 26, where does he come in for that point?
I think they wait. I think they kind of figure out what's going on. If, say, like, if Franco stays as the reserve driver for Williams, because like Albon and Sainz are both equal, like, and it's not like a manslaughter either side, which we'll
Oh,
get to the Williams discussion. I think you could see Audi maybe reaching out then, but I think, at least for me, if I was Audi's higher ups in terms of like getting a stable situation for 2026, Valtteri and Hulkenberg would be who I would want. As much as I think Mick would be a good decision for Audi, I think that's also more for 2026 and not 2025. But I also think Mick is doing really well in WEC in that Alpine. So I don't see why. I understand he wants to drive in F1, he wants to redeem himself.
yeah.
But I think his seasons in F1 kind of damned him to that, and he's doing better in WEC. So for me, why would he want to leave? He is showing he is dominant in a different series, especially because next year's already, like, I'm salivating at next year
Mhm.
with the last year on these regulations and what the top looks like right now. I just think next year you can have Hulkenberg and Bottas maybe actually score a point because you're going to have two competent drivers giving you back valuable feedback. I think Salba can only do so much right now. Not saying Joe isn't experienced and can't give feedback, but compared to Valtteri, you would think it's kind of like a Lance Stroll, Fernando Alonso thing in terms of like, are you getting valuable feedback? Are you actually getting two competent drivers?
But Aston Martin is a completely different thing because one, Lawrence Stroll owns the team. Two, Lance Stroll is his son, and three, he only hires former champions.
I'm just saying, like, in terms of like how you're developing the car, it's kind of on the same playing field to me in that sense.
Yeah, that doesn't sound too harsh on them.
Moving along, we go to Aston Martin. They are in Formula B. They
And
are
not even at the top of Formula B, sadly.
no. Like, I mean, the fact that Fernando Alonso had his 400th race in Mexico and retired.
That has to be a downer.
Although there's a stat saying that he also retired from his 200th Grand Prix and his 300th Grand Prix. So maybe it's just the milestones don't
Could
like
be.
Fernando.
Then what about the 50th? What about the 100th? What
I'm
about
not sure
those?
about those. I'm not sure. I just know for the main milestones of getting to the 200, 300, and 400 did not go well for him either.
But the funny thing is that he didn't retire in on his 20,000th lap, France 2023. No, 2022. He was for Alpine. So he
Uh,
didn't retire on his 20,000th lap.
Good job
Can
for
say that.
Fernando. But there's really
Good
not much to
grief.
say in terms of Aston Martin, which is sad.
They were a good team and now they have fallen.
The fact that Haas has, in my opinion, taken the fifth fastest team on a consistent basis
That's sad,
over
really.
Aston Martin tells you everything you need to know.
Yep. And the fact that Carlos Sainz is going to Williams is somehow less sad.
We can move to Williams now because, again, I have nothing more to say on Aston Martin. Okay, so two things.
Hmm.
One, I'm mad still at Alex for practice one of Mexico when he called Ollie Behrman an idiot. It was not Ollie's fault. I don't know why. I'll just get that out of the way. Because Ollie did nothing wrong. He got out of the way. He slowed down. Alex completely lost control of the car coming out of the corner. That is what I'll say on that. What I will say in terms of the last two races, or even the last three, because Singapore did not go well for Alex either,
No.
is I get people are concerned. I'm concerned as an Alex Albon friend for the fact that he has a competent teammate who is on par with him of getting the most out of that car. What I'm annoyed about is people saying that Alex is getting shafted at the end of the season
Which he
or
isn't.
he isn't, and also that next season signs will completely whitewash Alex.
Which he probably won't do.
I go into it as Williams has a successful lineup for when I'll say Carlos, because I think it will be Carlos first to dip, then Alex, or vice versa. It will depend. I think first off, I think next season it will be a lot closer between Alex and Carlos than people think,
Yep.
and it's not because I
Because
over.
I'll explain that a little quick. Because Sainz is a Grand Prix winner with a competitive team, he will naturally dip because one, Williams is in a rebuild phase, and two, they aren't race winners yet this era.
And he's going to a completely new structure. It will be an easier structure compared to Ferrari, but it will still be a
Yes,
new structure that he has to learn.
new and still hard. So,
Yes. But I think if anything, this is helping Alex be ready for next season. Because I
mm,
think if it was just, I think if Logan stayed in that seat until the end of the season and then we went to next season and then first off, I think the narrative would be changed of saying like the Williams was actually really good, yada yada yada. But I think if anything, people are taking it to an extreme because
mm.
Alex is in a dip in his performance right now.
And of course, your little lover boy, Logan Sargent, had this dip for the entire half of the season.
I wouldn't even say dip. He was just bad. Like, again, I'm okay with him not being on the grid. I'm just more annoyed at how it happened, but I digress. I think if anything, it shows that Williams, that one, Franco will be their reserve driver for next year, unless like Red Bull comes knocking. But I don't think Red Bull has too many of their own reserve drivers for them to go looking for other drivers.
And like I've said a few times, they have a habit of self-destructing.
So, if anything, it shows that if Signs or Alex leave the team for 2026, or Yeah, going into 2026 because they got a higher drive. They have a competent driver in the wings in Franco.
Absolutely. And I don't think he would say no.
And even then, I think Franco would rather stay with Williams because he knows where the trajectory is going.
He knows it. He has cemented himself well within that team. He likes it, I believe. He has said himself that he wants to stay. He doesn't want to leave. So
Mm-hmm. Again, I think next year it's going to be a completely different story. I think it will be more, again, close compared to Carlos and Alex because, again, and this isn't to harp on Carlos, especially after his, I will say, perfect weekend in Mexico. But Carlos does have moments where he does have his moments where he is on the back foot of not just Charles, but in general. Look at the last race last season where he crashed in practice and then didn't even score a point, which didn't help Ferrari, where they could have got second in the constructors. They didn't because he was out of position. So it is, I am worried just because I'm hoping that he can, for these last 4 weekends, he can get back, at least after, even if it's not good in Brazil, in the 3 week break for the last 3 races, he can get back to where he was. This is Alex, by the way, for people who are listening. I'm hoping he can just end the season on a high. And even if it's close between the two of them, I think he just needs to get through the rest of the season, have the reset, and then go into next season with that better mindset. If anything, this helps him going into next season. Yes, I will not say Colapinto is on the same level as Carlos Sainz, but to have him have that competitive edge of having somebody who was up with him gives him a better trajectory of what he needs to work on for next season.
that's true. If he does, if he does well, that can pay off in the form of a podium or regular points. And so, yeah, I don't, I don't know what to say about that.
If anything, it helps Williams.
Yeah.
Because I think next season it will be between Williams, Haas, and maybe Alpine for the
Hmm.
fifth fastest car.
Yeah, that could be true.
Next season's wonky, man.
Very wonky.
All right. We'll quickly go over Haas, even though we mentioned that they are looking really good in terms of like a team standing. I think one Hulkenberg is regretting not re-signing with Haas. I'll say that off the bat.
I think so too, and I think K-Mag is also regretting leaving,
It's not his fault he's leaving.
but still, he's leaving.
He is leaving. I mean, if anything, he can be happy he's finishing his career on a high.
But we don't know where he will head next. So,
I think he's out of I think he's out of Formula One,
well,
personally.
yeah, he's out of that. But he could go to IndyCar. He could
Yeah, I'm just
do World
saying
Endurance. Yeah,
his career in F1 will finish on a high, I think.
yeah. If he manages to score points in these last few races, then yes.
But yeah, my only thing, I will state this with my chest held high. Gunther was the problem. Statistically looking at the season, he was the problem. I'll ask you this. Do you think Ao Komatsu is a better team principal than Gunther Steiner?
No.
Why?
He's bland, and very negative, and ugh.
Okay, personality wise aside, car development and how the team is doing.
Okay, so completely different story than yes, of course, he is a way better in principle, but I can't really forgive what he said before the season.
He was giving his realistic expectations. If he would have came out and said he's gonna have the best car in the grid, best midfield car in the grid, let's say that, would you have believed him?
No,
So you believed when he came out and said they'll have the worst car in the grid, correct?
yes,
He set realistic expectations.
I believe that. I believed what he said in regards to selling the team.
Are you just annoyed because Haas is good?
I don't know.
You just don't know any. Like, you're just like, Haas has been so bad for so long, and I don't know how to cope.
I'm confused.
I mean, to be fair, they did get better once Haas's owner sold his NASCAR seats.
And of course, you know more about this than what I do.
I mean, yeah, he just sold them off and then got more money to put into F1, basically, is what he did. So basically, Gene's entire focus now is more F1 than Split.
Didn't he sponsor Roman Grosjean as well?
I think maybe I have no idea,
I don't know. But
but
that aside,
it makes for next year for Ollie. My crazy prediction for next year, and we'll put it in this, is that Ollie will actually. I'll say Ollie and not Esteban, just because Esteban's form is scaring me. Ollie will either score in the top five or possibly get a podium next year
okay,
in the Haas.
okay, I'll take you up on that and say that he'll get an inherited win.
I don't think it will be in the beginning parts of the season. I think it will be more towards like the middle end because
Well,
it.
I was thinking about the entire season.
I'm just saying like because I think it would happen more in the middle than the end towards the end because of what the title fight might look like. But I'm just I'm not gonna say much as win. I will say maybe a inherited podium or something like that.
Mm. In
All
short,
right.
I'm confused. As is good. As have usually been bad. I don't know what I think now.
They haven't been this good since they first came on the scene, I'm pretty sure.
I don't know what to expect, so I'm confused.
You're happy, you should be happy because Ollie Behrman is your driver and he's gonna be in the seat next year.
Yep, it's my boy. Very happy for him, of course, but still confused.
Now we're getting into the top four teams, and we'll start with Mercedes. Merc confuses me, and I don't think they're gonna be in the title fight next season.
No need to explain to me, but maybe for the casual listeners.
Of course. In the US one, Lewis had one of his worst weekends. I mean, you could say that's more on Lewis than anything, where he didn't finish, he was out by the second lap. But then they looked okay in Mexico. I mean, George, he started from the pit lane in the US and finished sixth. So good run from him, but he also crashed twice in that weekend, both in quali, which is what made qualifying annoying because everybody was on good laps, and then George went wee into turn 19. And then in Mexico, they looked good, but they didn't look to be on the pace of Max, or well, I can't say Max, but I'll say Max
Mm.
or the Orlando or the Ferraris. So I'm not saying they can't fix it, but you're not going to have Lewis on your team next year. George, I feel like, is maybe too inconsistent for me, and they're gonna have a rookie in Antonelli, and I think Antonelli will need at least till summer break to get around that car.
So he needs the second half of the season, in other words.
But I think by the second half, I mean, it might still be close, so it might be possible, but I really don't see them getting higher than fifth next season
Mm.
for a lot of those races. Maybe fourth because I don't know where that Red Bull is going to stand. I also don't trust Mercedes to build the car that they need to because how many times in these regulations have they said they fixed an issue and then it's not fixed?
How about the whole of this season?
Like they looked like they had it fixed for 3 of those races, but then they didn't. And they're saying it's just a temperature thing. Well, who's to say that they fix the temperature issue next season? We go into next season and it's not fixed. Like I just don't trust Merc enough to be like they might be in the championship fight next year. I think it will be close. I think it will be close because of what the other 5 drivers I think having a shot at winning next season will do. But I can't. For me, it's not because of their drivers. It's because Merc is too inconsistent for me to be like I'm backing them. Like I feel like these 2 races kind of showed us where Merc is going to be.
I feel like Mercedes is this wild card team of sorts now.
I think they're looking for 2026 when it's a engine regulation. I think that's when it might be better for them.
And of course, I'm gonna be angry. I'm gonna upset a lot of Mercedes fans here, but I know what you guys want. I know that you want Russell 2026 champion. Will you get it? Most likely not.
Because you're going to have still the McLarens, they're going to have the Mercedes engines. You'll have Williams in the Mercedes engines, and then you'll have Alpine in the Mercedes engines.
Which I'm still confused about.
No more Renault. No more French engines on the grid.
It's still a French team.
Yeah, still a French team, but no French engines.
The
All right.
Ferrari Haas deal is for 2028. Yeah,
It'll probably go farther. I think Ferrari will want to have a sister team. It's not really a sister team.
this
They'll want somebody to
development
have.
team.
Let's move.
And speaking of Russell, he didn't crash in Mexico.
He crashed in Pirelli tire practice 2, which is why the hour and a half practice session they weren't allowed. Some didn't get onto other tires.
Yeah, I don't watch practice, so I won't really count that.
He still crashed during the weekend.
But what I was getting at is that he didn't crash when Sainz won.
Good job. It
That's
was
unusual
close.
for him.
Some of the Lewis George fighting was a little close there for a bit, and I thought it might happen.
But no, good on him.
Good on him. All
But
right.
the funny thing here is that the Sainz wins have also been in very strange places.
All right.
Of course, you have
Let's
Silverstone 2022, you have Singapore 2023, and then you have
Australia earlier this.
Australia 2024, and then you have Mexico 2024.
We'll go to McLaren, but it's gonna just be Oscar for right now. What is happening to Oscar?
I don't know.
In the sprint qualifying, he only made it. He was in 16th. He got to 10th in that race. In the race itself, he did qualify 5th and finish 5th, so that was good. But then in Mexico, he didn't make it out of Q1. He qualified behind Colapinto and
Which
then
shouldn't be
only
something
got
he can do, but yeah.
and then only got up to 8th. Whereas if you look at last year, Lando qualified around the same position and got up to the top 5.
But another detail about last year is that Colapinto wasn't there.
Very true. Again, we do have to remind ourselves it is only his second season, but when you are close in a constructors fight and your teammate is close in trying to win a championship fight and you're not there to do anything, it's concerning.
You need this guardian to help you out, like that. Look
Like
at
next,
Verstappen last year. He won single-handedly,
that's because every other car sucked.
apart from the Ferrari.
A Ferrari on a single race.
But damn, it was a good race.
But yeah, I think it's concerning in terms of the constructors. It's concerning in terms of Lando not having that rear gunner to help block Max. I think it's going to be fine next year. Actually, it's going to be a chaos show in McLaren next year, but it's a little concerning. I'm not like super worried about it, but it is something I want to keep an eye on because again, his quality has kind of been what's been hampering him this season.
So, yeah, that's true. Wally is his kind of not Achilles heel, but something that he doesn't want to do.
So, I mean, we'll see what the rest of the season goes like. It's something to look at, and it could be why McLaren loses this constructors.
Could be, but of course we will speculate on that more when Brazil rolls around.
Okay, so we have 4 drivers technically left to talk about. Let's go Carlos because he's the less complicated out of these 4 to talk about. I will reiterate, a perfect weekend in Mexico for him.
Yes, no mistakes, nothing of importance to him. It was a good win, a deserved one.
Very nice to see him get his last win in I won't say his last win, but could be his last win in Ferrari at Mexico. I will say during the race
to do it.
Yeah. I will say during the race I was a little annoyed just for two parts. The first one was when Charles was kind of right up behind him and he kind of complained into the team radio and it's like, well, you did the same in the sprint in Austin and you didn't back off and then you took the place. So why are you getting annoyed that Charles is fighting you for the win? Again, Charles then had to deal with temperatures and they did ask him to slow down and he did and all that. So a little bit of gripe there, but I'm like, what is what it is. The other part that I had a little bit of a gripe with is now I understand it was more the Lando Charles fight for P2 was more due to traffic, But if
Mhm.
I recall correctly, they did ask Carlos to slow down a bit to try and help get Charles at least some extra help to try and buffer it, and I don't think he ever did. Not saying he doesn't have to, but it was a Ferrari 1-2. I'm not saying it's his fault that he lost, but he definitely could maybe played a little bit of a bit more into that. But like during the race, I was a little bit more pissed and such, but like I get it. Mr. Carlos Sainz fan, do you have an opinion?
No, I'm gonna shut up now.
I will say I have seen some things on the internet saying that Carlos Sainz is going to win the championship next year because he's going to Williams. And if you follow, I believe it's Prost's trajectory, who is the one who put Carlos in Ferrari's radar. It was like Prost went from Renault to McLaren to
Lost
Ferrari to
signs.
Williams and then won. I'm really sorry to burst those people's bubbles, but I really don't think the Williams is going to be anywhere close to winning a race next season.
No, this hurts me as a Carlos Sainz fan, but I have to agree.
I'm just throwing that out there. I don't think Carlos will win in a Williams. I think maybe he might get a race. He'd get a podium in it. But I don't think that Williams is going to be in any way, shape, or form next year to win a race. I think Haas has a better chance of winning a race next season than Williams. Trying to be realistic to those people who are really big again, Carlos Sainz should not be going to a Williams.
No.
But I don't think Carlos Sainz in his career has shown to be a Lewis or a Max. I'm not saying he can't win a championship. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying he can't. He's not. If you look at Max and Lewis, they can take the maximum out of a car that
Hmm.
isn't always there.
I only have one more thing to say, and that's they should have switched Antonelli and Sainz.
Yes, I can agree with that. But again, I think Toto has his reasons.
He has been hell bent on Antonelli this entire season.
I mean, it makes sense. He wants to show, like, Lewis leaving Mercedes is a big deal, and he wants to make a statement. And his statement is, we have been in this, in Antonelli's life and developing him, and we're going to show you what he is.
But if he ends up being a total screw over, then
I don't think he's going to be that. There will be crashes, don't get me wrong, but I think that's with any rookie you're expecting some type of crash. Let's go to the three realistically still able to win the driver's standings. So I have done the calculations. There are 116 points left on the table going into Brazil. Max is 71 points ahead of Charles and is 47 ahead of Lando. I say Charles still has a chance, and this is why, because I believe at some point Max and Lando will crash with each other and DNF. If you do not believe me, look at these last two races. We are about to get into the meat and potatoes of the topic.
or better yet, look at Austria.
Yes, but I'm saying Max is now fighting Lando differently. Would you disagree with said statement?
No,
Max knows right now that Lando has to finish every race. He also knows
he has to finish and score points, mind you.
and finish ahead of him. So Max, being Max and as Michael Schumacher-ish as possible, is going to completely ruin his own race to ruin Lando's race. And also, the people who are like pissed at Max and being like, he's a dangerous driver, yet, like, yes, some of the moves he pulled in Mexico were dangerous. Do not get me wrong.
And also Austin, don't forget.
If you're okay, Max is very good at playing the rule book. He does that very well, and it is a fine line. In Austin, it worked to his favor because Max was able to keep it on track. Lando completely went off track, and then Lando passed him. Yes, did he force him off the track? Yes. At the apex, Lando was not there because I have watched this replay too many times to count. Lando was not there before the apex, and thus Max was there. Should Max and him both gotten penalties? Yes, I believe that should have happened.
Did they get penalties? Both of them? No.
No, Max did not get a penalty. Lando did for taking over Max off the track. which is why Lando finished in fifth. And then McLaren asked Oscar to back off the pace because Lando might get a 5-second penalty. Cool, cool, cool. In Mexico, we'll go with the first incident. I don't know if Lando would have had the speed to overtake him going into that first turn, but the second incident where Max did a really late lunge and it was just dangerous, that is completely on Max and why, and that deserved the 10-second penalty. I don't think he should have got a 10-second penalty for whichever one they decided was the second one. I think it should have been a 5.
Well, either way, he got 20 seconds worth of penalties. So.
No, I know. I get that. My issue is you can't give Lando 5 seconds and then go into this week, and when it's Max, you give him 10 seconds for each incident. It's too inconsistent. But also, I am under the personal belief Max really only pushes, he knows where each other driver's limit is, which is why him battling with Max, Max battling with Max. That's English and how this works.
Verstappen battling himself.
Yeah. Max battling Hamilton in 2021 and then Max battling Charles in general. He knows where those limits are and he knows what that other driver will do. He knows that they will not give any other room. And thus he does fight them differently. Lando, I don't know what it is. He knows Lando is scared.
Scared to fight.
Scared to make that lunge.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, I listen to Lando's radios during it, and it does make him. I get annoyed off it because I'm like, especially because you watched Carlos in that same race in Mexico be able to pull off the pass for Max for the lead. It doesn't make sense to me on what Lando isn't learning, what he's not getting. Like, he has so many examples to look over of how, like, of just examples of how to fight Max. You can't let him have the inside line. You have to be committed to doing a dive bomb.
You have to take advantage of his penalties when he gets them.
But he should have been leading the race after turn 1. He decided to go to the inside instead of the outside when he had the perfect slipstream.
No, he didn't lead.
No, he went to the inside. Like, I get McLaren made mistakes this season and Lando made mistakes this season, and thus the championship is as where it is, and he needs to outscore Max by 12 points each weekend. But there are so many examples that he could learn from to fight Max. Yes, he wasn't in those, but you can still study it. You can study how Charles goes against Max. Like, again, I feel like that's a little bit harder to do because Max and Charles have been fighting each other since childhood. But if you need that example of somebody who wasn't used to fighting Max, look at the 2021 season of Max versus Hamilton. Yes, it was about the same thing because Max was being as aggressive there as he is now. I just don't get what Lando's I don't understand why Lando isn't making changes to how he's driving.
Yeah, I can't really explain that either because I don't get it.
I get that it's kind of like McLaren for a lot of the year did have the best car on the grid and they should have won more races than they did. So I will throw that out there, but
they should have won Austria. They should have won Silverstone as well. They should have won Imola. Yeah.
They should have won a lot of races. They should have won a lot more races than they have. The fact that Ferrari and them have the same amount of wins.
That kind of speaks volumes about what Ferrari are doing and what McLaren are doing.
So it annoys me more that, especially in these last 2 races, to hear Lando whine, I guess is the best way to put it. I get that Max is who he is, and people like that, don't like that, whatever. Again, I'm not condoning anything, a lot of what he did in Mexico, because in Mexico, there were times there was the instant that he did push it over the edge.
Of course, we know what Mexico is. Mexico isn't an easy track by any means.
But you are able to overtake. There are possibilities to overtake.
Yes, but it's not easy.
And this is why I say Charles still has a chance, because Max will absolutely ruin his own race if Lando's race is also ruined. And if that means they crash and they both DNF and Charles then wins,
right?
That's how Charles comes back into this.
Now, Austria is a good example of that, with a different winner, mind you. But the reason why I wanted to use Austria specifically is because one, they ruin each other's races. Two, another one swoops in before both retire.
Well, Max never retired. They both technically finished, even though Lando retired.
Verstappen was on the cusp of retiring, so I'm gonna.
He did finish fifth, so we'll put that out there. For me, going into these last race weekends, I really do see Lando and Max both having issues. Even if just one of them DNF, if Max is the one to DNF, but Lando can still keep going, but Lando then finish like in the low points to no points, like I could see that also happening.
That's probably a bit more plausible.
But I also see Max knows Lando isn't gonna put his nose of his car in a place that is too risky, and
No.
and Max is going to play off that to the
Yes.
extent. I think what annoys me more is the media surrounding everything, because the media is like, this is too bad, we need to change all the rules, and we're all and I sit here and I think about it and I'm like, this is what Schumacher did, this is what Senna did, this is what all the greats did. Why is it now such an issue? Like, if this was Lewis, would they be saying the same thing?
No. That's what I'm saying.
I
British bias.
We're neither British, neither of us are British, so it
No.
works.
Don't hang us, please.
But yeah, that is my take on it.
In conclusion, British bias is still a thing.
Again, I don't think Max loses this championship per se, especially because he did end up winning the sprint and he did end up getting third in Austin. I really think it comes down to the constructors title, and
Mm.
I really don't think McLaren wins it. I know we had recorded predictions earlier, and I'm not sure when they will get out, if they will get out. And I said McLaren will win the constructors. But the fact that we went into Austin, Ferrari didn't bring upgrades, McLaren did. And then
Mm.
in Mexico, Ferrari is back to optimizing everything they had before Canada.
Canada was in June? Yeah.
Yes. So Monaco was when Charles won, and that was May. And then Canada is when it all went downhill for like those stretches of like 5 races, right?
Yeah, right.
They are only 29 points behind McLaren.
Right.
There are 4 races left and 116 points.
Well, mind you, there are more points to be had than the constructors, but
Yes, but I'm just saying as a maximum, there's 116 points. So a maximum of at minimum, if Charles or Carlos, I'll just say either one of them finish first for the rest of the season, that's 116 points.
and of course we have Brazil and Qatar, which both give 37 points at
And with
most.
And this is
Oh,
where Oscar comes into play, because if Max is fighting Lando, because Max is I will say threatened by Lando's championship run, because Max is not in the better car than the McLaren. The McLaren is the better car compared to Red Bull.
as it stands.
As it stands, I don't think it's going to change throughout I think that might change next season, but I kind of Ferrari is kind of just like doing their own thing, and doing their own thing is causing them to get a 1-2 in Austin and then a 1-3 in Brazil.
Mexico, you mean?
Yes.
Brazil hasn't happened yet, that as of this recording.
Maybe I'm from the future. Who knows? Excuse
We're
my
recording
language.
this on Halloween 2024, so
You don't know. I could have time traveled.
true.
I'm just saying it is very possible that Ferrari takes the constructors.
There's the woman in the Ferrari hoodie.
And to be fair, I want that, because I want Charles and Carlos to finish on a high.
Says the woman in the Ferrari hoodie.
But I mean, it doesn't make sense. McLaren should be leading both championships in a very decent margin, and they're not.
If they had won Austria, if they had won Imola, if they had won Silverstone, they could have. No, they didn't win.
And now you have Ferrari, who finally got fixed whatever issues they had in the middle of the season, and they usually finish the season really well. And again, Ferrari has not bring upgrades. They did not bring any upgrades, and I don't believe they are bringing any more upgrades for the rest of the season. And they are showing better pace than the McLaren. And they pulled out a 1-2 in Austin and a 1-3 in Mexico. It is very highly possible that one, McLaren loses the constructors and comes in second behind Ferrari. And it is possible for Lando to not win the drivers' championship, but two, also finish third instead of second.
If that were to happen, McLaren will be the laughing stock.
It will be bottled. This will be one of the. Will this override Charles and Ferrari's bottle in 2022? I think so. And I say that because McLaren had the dominant car. Whereas if you look at 2022, towards the end of that season, the car fell away. Yes, there were Charles mistakes, but there were also Lando mistakes. So that's why I'm like, I'm not doing more driver comparison.
And they had Mattia Binotto, mind you.
So
which didn't make things better. So
no. So that is what I'm saying.
I'm just gonna throw that out there.
That is what I am saying when it comes to this. Also, this be a completely different conversation that we were having if Ferrari did not have a meltdown in the middle of the season. Because if Ferrari actually had their eggs in a basket and were able to convert and stay consistent from Canada for that stretch of time, I really do think that one, Charles would be winning the driver standing right now, and two, they'd be very well in the lead of the constructors. But that is a if factor.
A very big if.
But
that's also a different discussion to be had.
That is a what could have been situation. But right now, I think maybe Ferrari has the fastest car on the grid in race pace. I'll say in race pace because I mean Carlos did put 0.3 on everybody in Mexico for pole, so there's that. But I do think Ferrari in race pace is the fastest car.
That could be. I don't know what they're gonna do for the last I'm gonna say 6 races because of the sprints.
I don't see them having an issue, and I honestly think if you look at it, Charles kind of was on the back. Like, yes, Charles' pace in general was on the back foot this in Mexico, but you have to remember that one, Ollie was in the seat for practice 1, and then Albon crashed with Ollie, so they had to fix the car. And then by the time Charles was ready to get into the car, George crashed the car and caused the red flag, meaning he lost even more time. And it was a Pirelli test. So Charles really only had a practice session to get things set up for Mexico. And again, Ollie didn't even get to do the whole practice session. So they didn't even get all of like his data because I forget when it happened. But I really do think, again, he did have the mistake in Mexico causing him to lose P2 to Lando, and I think maybe it would have happened anyway because he didn't have the setup correct for the race. But I also think that I personally don't think Lando would have caught Carlos.
No. But again, that's a different discussion to be had. So with that, I think that's a wrap.
I think that is a wrap. Somebody did the calculations. Ferrari only needs to outscore McLaren by 7.5 points per weekend.
And the championship is Verstappen's to lose.
So that is our US and Mexico City wrap up for the season.
And of course, next time we have Brazil on the menu.
I'm so excited. Brazil is my favorite race.
Brazil is a good one.
So we shall see what is happening and if this Max Lando controversy continues. But I hope everybody enjoys the rest of the day. I hope everybody has a good Brazilian Grand Prix weekend. We will come back at you in a week's time to discuss, maybe cry, maybe throw something, maybe lose our minds because somebody completely different won the race. Who knows?
As per usual, you can reach out to us on socials and in the pits, of course.
But otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day and have a good one, guys.